Universal Casualty, Super Q,
los Miami Dolphins y tú, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Son los Dolphins, nuestros Miami Dolphins, el team número 1 en toda la nación. Y son ellos orgullo de Miami y de todos los latinos en la capital del sol. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Este año no me hablen de los Redskins, no me hablen de los Chargers, ni de los Dallas Cowboys, porque los Dolphins son número 1 y lo demostrarán al llegar al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Nuestra línea está mejor que nunca y nuestra defensiva fue siempre la mejor. Y es por eso que yo no tengo duda que los Miami Dolphins ganarán el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, con los Miami Dolphins, rumbo al Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl. Con los Miami Dolphins me voy para el Super Bowl.
Universal Casualty
Y Super Q, los primeros. Bueno, caballeros, todo el mundo que cante con nosotros. Dame una D, dame una O, dame una L, dame una P, una H, una I, una N, una S. ¿Qué es lo que tenemos? Miami Dolphins. Me voy para el Super Bowl. 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 Me voy para el Super Bowl.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
There's a team Dolphin fans. Football is mighty rough. Winning gets awful tough. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, sponsored by BetUS, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
Wow, you're already so defeated. We haven't even gotten into it. I'm getting juiced up over here to try to make this a positive episode of the show because, in spite of everything, it's all right there. It's all right there for the Miami Dolphins. For a third consecutive season, the Dolphins find themselves traveling on the road in week 17 with potentially an opportunity to secure a playoff berth. All they have to do is go and win. And of course, that is something that has been easier said than done over the past 4 weeks, as things have sort of begun a little bit of a downward slide for the Dolphins this season. But all that said, it's all still out in front of them. And even though our hopes and maybe expectations for this season have been dashed and taken a big hit over the past few weeks, it's all still there to play for, Brain. So, I mean, there's obviously, we're as cynical as anybody. We the guys that host the show called the Same Old Dolphin Show, we're pretty cynical when it comes to this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's all still right there, right?
I mean, yes and no. Yeah, it's all right there. And look, I sat here and I said, the last 3 games weren't must-win games. Well, a lot of the fan base was demanding and banging the table. No, this is a must-win game. You have to win this game to do anything with this season. And I maintained that, while they were big games, they were not must-win games. And I think that this game against the Patriots is a must-win game, even though there is still a decent chance for the Dolphins to make the playoffs, even if they don't win this game against the New England Patriots. I just think with everything that this team has been through, with the hot starts, with the losing streaks, with the current losing streak, the way that they've lost the games, the Tua concussions, the optics around the Dolphins from a national standpoint, at this point, you've got to, at the very least, come out of this season feeling like you are without question the second best team in the division. And yes, you are a legitimate playoff team that, if you get some health and you add a couple of pieces, can be the Super Bowl contender that you wanted and expected and thought that you might be this year. At this point, I'd say it's very difficult to believe that this team, even if Tua is cleared at some point and the Dolphins win these next 2 games, it's hard to imagine the Dolphins going into Cincinnati, Kansas City, or Buffalo and winning a road playoff game in the first round, let alone having to beat multiple teams on the road to make a legitimate Super Bowl run. So to me, especially now with Tua missing this game, it's about salvaging the season. The expectations have been lowered. I mean, yeah, we don't want to speculate on how much time Tua is going to miss, if he's going to play again this season, if he'll be ready next week or whatever. At the end of the day, if you really believe in this roster, and you believe in Mike McDaniel as a head coach, and you believe in Chris Greer as a general manager, you brought in Teddy Bridgewater to be one of the better backups in the league. Now, at this point, I don't know that any Dolphin fans can feel confident in that assessment, but you've got to feel like you can beat the Patriots. This is not a super talented Patriots roster. This is a Patriots roster that, look, they have a good defense, and they can run the ball. And if they play clean football, it's very like 90s Patriots, where, like the early Brady Belichick Patriots, where they're just going to try to not beat themselves and be opportunistic. So, but you've got a talent advantage. Even with all of the injuries, the Dolphins have a talent advantage against the New England Patriots. So whether it's Teddy Bridgewater, whether it's Skylar Thompson, whether it was Tua, you need to be able to go in New England and beat that team. I don't care how you do it. I don't care if you win by 1 point. I don't care if you win by 30 points. You've got to find a way to win that game. And then you got to find a way to beat the Jets the next week. Even if I suppose, like, look, if the Jets lose, on Sunday and the Dolphins win, then you don't have anything to play for. Then I guess that game becomes meaningless. But
yeah, it essentially becomes an exhibition game.
Yeah, but this week you control your own destiny for one more week.
Absolutely. At least one more week. You control your destiny.
One more week, you control your own destiny.
So
go out and create your destiny in a
That's
positive
a great
way.
way to put it. That's a great way to put it. And we're going to be discussing that and discussing how the Dolphins do that in this episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show. But before we go any further, reminder that if you're not doing so already, you should be following us on Twitter at Amplified to Rock, at Aaron the Brain. That's at Aaron the Brain. The show is at Same Old Dolphins. You can subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Shout out to everybody watching live on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Go ahead and smash that like button real quick as you watch this video. We appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and turn on notifications so you're notified every time we go live. You can also like the I Am a Miami Dolphin Fan Facebook page. Shout out to everybody who is watching on the Facebook page today. What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us. And of course, you can download, rate, review, and subscribe to the Same Old Dolphin Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and everywhere that you get your podcasts. So, Brain, yes. You basically said it there, right? Here we are. Here's the situation. In spite of everything that has happened, all of the ups and downs, all of the, the concussion situation, and we're not going to be discussing the concussion stuff because we talked about it earlier in this week. I talked about it on an episode of Go Time Dolphins. So check them out if you haven't already. Go Time Dolphins on YouTube and in podcast form. And Mike did an excellent episode earlier this week about the concussion stuff as well. I mean, at this point, there's a lot of conversation about NFLPA investigations and this, that, and the other thing. And all of it is noise. All of it is noise. Nothing is going to happen here other than at some point, Tua Tagovailoa is going to decide whether or not he wants to continue playing football. If he does decide he wants to continue playing football, the Miami Dolphins will decide whether or not they want to continue playing football with Tua. And that's where that conversation is at this point in time. And that's what we're going to see how that all develops. But all of that stuff aside, the Miami Dolphins still find themselves sitting here at 8-7 with 2 games to go, knowing that if they go into Foxboro and beat the Patriots, and if the Seahawks defeat the Jets, that the Dolphins could, by the time they land in South Florida on Sunday night after the game, could be a playoff team. That's what we know. There's how they get there. That's the question. Now, I know that, Brain, you sort of mentioned earlier that Teddy Bridgewater, and this is the big kind of talking point, right? Teddy Bridgewater does sound like he's going to be the starter at this point. It hasn't been 100% confirmed, but it's been all but confirmed at this point by Mike McDaniel, that Teddy Bridgewater is going to be your starting quarterback for the Dolphins on Sunday. And I know that people are concerned about the play that they've seen from Teddy this season, but a reminder that he played 1 snap in the game where a game plan was built specifically for him against the Jets before he was pulled because of a ghost concussion, by the ghost spotter. And then the other time he played, it was in a game where he had spent the full week in concussion protocol and was finally cleared just in time to serve as the backup to Skylar Thompson, who played for the majority of the first half. And then Teddy came in afterwards and was playing on a different game plan. I know he hasn't covered himself in glory. He didn't cover himself in glory that afternoon. But the fact of the matter is, this was not a guy that was playing in the game plan that was designed specifically for him. So if you're looking for reasons to be optimistic, that's one. Another reason to be optimistic about Teddy is that Teddy Bridgewater has played 1 down of football this year with Teron Armstead as his left tackle. Teron Armstead was injured early on in the Jets game shortly after Teddy Bridgewater and did not play in the Minnesota game where Bridgewater came off the bench in relief of Skylar Thompson. So Teddy has not played behind Teron Armstead at any point this season. So that's another reason to be optimistic. And well, I don't know whether it's a reason to be optimistic or not, but Liam Eichenberg is back on the roster. I believe that he should start on the bench behind Robert Jones, who's been doing a fine job filling in for Eichenberg since Eichenberg has been on IR, but Eichenberg will be back this week. So I think this is going to be the first time that we're seeing Teddy behind something approaching a full strength offensive line. We know it's not really a full strength offensive line because, I mean, Teron Armstead at this point is held together by duct tape and crazy glue. And obviously Brandon Shell at right tackle isn't the dream. And Robert Jones, although he's doing an admirable job at left guard at guard is doing fine, but it's not, the ideal situation. But Teddy is going to get to play this game behind a little bit better of an offensive line. And even against a strong defensive front like the Patriots have, that's an advantage. So if you're looking for reasons to be optimistic, there's some. If you're looking for more reasons to be optimistic, the Patriots secondary is all banged up to the point that there's a rumor floating around right now that Lynn Bowden Jr., who is on the Patriots practice squad, has been taking snaps in practice at defensive back, and that he may be trotted out there in the secondary for the Patriots. So I don't know what that means. And, that could just be a smokescreen, and I don't want to buy too much into it because it's just one of those rumors that's floating around out there. So I don't know how true it is. I know it's something that I heard on the internet. So that has to be kind of true, right? If I heard it on the internet. So there are reasons for optimism. The other thing is, and this will be my last point before I throw it over to you, Brain, to give me your thoughts on the Dolphins offense and Teddy Bridgewater, is the fact that the Dolphins can run the ball. And if there was ever reason to actually make this head coach commit to running the ball, maybe having your backup quarterback in there is that reason to do it. Even though the Patriots are a decent run-stopping team, they're going to be set up. They're going to still be trying to set up with a weakened secondary to try to stop the Dolphins' elite receivers in Waddle and Hill. So that is going to open the door for the Dolphins to establish the run. So maybe, just maybe, Brain, this is going to be the opportunity for Mike McDaniel to dial back a little bit of that aggressiveness, at least just a hair. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I don't know that we know that this team can run the ball without Tua, because you have to remember that when this team started running the ball well over the last couple of games, it coincided with defenses employing the strategy of dropping their linebackers deeper into coverage, which makes it easier to run the football. I don't know that the Patriots are going to be doing that, because I don't think that the Patriots are as concerned about Teddy Bridgewater's ability to fit the ball into tight windows with touch in the middle of the field. I think the Patriots would rather invite Teddy Bridgewater to throw the ball down the middle of the field, because he is not as accurate as Tua, and he's not as good as anticipating throws and, fitting the ball into tight windows. So I think you're going to see a more standard defensive game plan for the Patriots. And I think the Patriots are going to say, well, I'm sure they'll keep safeties back and they'll play some conservative coverage. I think they're going to say, we're not going to let the Dolphins beat us on the ground. We're going to make Teddy Bridgewater beat us. And I think what they're going to try to do is they're going to try to, put the Dolphins in bad down and distance, force the Dolphins to take some underneath throws and then just tackle, and force Teddy Bridgewater into having some third down situations where he's got to make the throw. And as a Dolphin fan, I don't feel terribly confident in that. But Teddy Bridgewater, look, you did a lot of work to, kind of justify his negative play in his short period of time, being the quarterback for this team when he's had to be on the field. He's just got to play better. I think he showed signs in his first game when Tua came out against Cincinnati and he had like a really nice drive at the end of the half. I thought he showed some signs in that game. He made a couple of throws that, the one thing about Teddy Bridgewater that I'll say that he does actually better than Tua is obviously arm strength, the way he drives the ball down the field, but his deep ball, he doesn't need to anticipate Tyreek Hill getting open as much. He can wait a little bit longer, as he is apt to do, and just let it rip. And he's got the arm strength to get it down there, probably an extra 10 to 20 yards further than Tua. So I think the Dolphins still have the ability to stretch the field. It's the middle of the field throws that concern me, because that's been such a strength of the offense all year long, because it is a strength of Tua's game. And without having Tua, the question mark is, can this offense run the football if the opposing defense doesn't have their linebackers sitting 10 to 15 yards off the line of scrimmage? That said, you need to be able to run the ball. I think you need to have balance, but you also need to be able to attack the Patriots where they're weakest, which is their secondary, which also happens to be the counter to the Dolphins' biggest strength, which is our receivers. So you still have to be able to take advantage of your advantages, and Teddy Bridgewater has to have a great game. But obviously, if you can run the football, that's going to make things a lot easier.
This is a big game for the Dolphins offense and defense, frankly, to clean up a lot of the sloppiness that has existed in the past few games. Because if they can play a clean game against this Patriots team, I am still of the belief that roster to roster, the Dolphins are the more talented team, even without Tua Tagovailoa, just from top to bottom. The question is, can the Dolphins execute at the level that they need to execute? And what is the X factor, I guess, here is the coaching, because we know that Patriots have a very good head coach, although the rest of their coaching staff maybe leaves a bit to be desired. But we know that Mike McDaniel has a desire to get a little cute sometimes. Brain, as we are recording here, as we are broadcasting live, we do have some news, because it looks like Mike McDaniel's doing a press conference right up against us, which of course, Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins need to compete with the Same Old Dolphin Show. I mean, it's the wrestling wars all over again. But breaking news, Tua Tagovailoa has officially been ruled out for Sunday. So there's no chance that he's going to be cleared late and play on Sunday. He has been officially ruled out. Bradley Chubb and Alec Ingold, who are both nursing hand injuries, are being called game time decisions. Xavien Howard, who picked up a knee injury yesterday and showed up on Thursday's practice report, will practice today. And according to Coach McDaniel, Teron Armstead is a warrior, but he's going to push it until game time and see if he can give it a go. That's been kind of the MO for Teron Armstead this season. I'd be surprised at this point if in what amounts to be the biggest game of the season, essentially, if Armstead suddenly can't go. So we'll keep you abreast of anything else that breaks from the press conference as we go through here. But it sounds like things are going to be progressing more or less as we would have expected them to from a health standpoint for the Dolphins. So there we are.
Yeah, and I think it's just gamesmanship, with, waiting until Friday. Maybe it's gamesmanship. Maybe the Dolphins feel like Tua's got a chance to be, had a chance to be cleared, and that maybe bodes well for his availability next week. We don't really know that. The Teron Armstead stuff, I think, is gamesmanship. I really hope that it is, because if Teron Armstead can't go in this game against the Patriots, then we're going to circle back to the conversation we had prior to the Chargers game, when it really wasn't a must-win game, but Teron Armstead went out there and played. And if this guy aggravated his injury and is missing the actual must-win games for 2 games that the Dolphins lost that have proven to not be must-win games, then that's going to look like a really foolish decision. But hopefully Teron Armstead will play and we'll get that full complement of an offensive line, because it's bad enough to be playing this game without Tua and be playing with Teddy Bridgewater. If you play without Teron Armstead as well, I just don't see it. I don't see it at all.
Yeah, then it really becomes a challenge. But let's talk about the other side of the ball. And of course, before we do that, and we're at the point of the year where we haven't gotten new verbiage from our sponsors here yet. But I just want to remind everybody to visit manscaped.com because they are a sponsor of the show. So visit manscaped.com, use the promo code DolphinsTalk to save 20% off of the best men's below the belt grooming equipment out there. And it's not just the equipment. There's also the liquid formulations, the soap, the body wash, the shampoo, all kinds of good stuff over there at manscaped.com. So use the promo code DolphinsTalk and you can get some good stuff to make yourself look good below the belt. And then you want to head over to trueclassic.com. I happen to be wearing my True Classic gray zip hoodie right now. I've got a gray, I think they call this charcoal underneath my True Classic tee underneath. So I'm rocking the True Classic right now. Awesome products. Love them. Have loved them since before they were a sponsor. So head over to trueclassic.com. Use the promo code DolphinsTalk to save 25% off of your order. They just added some great new packs for the holidays and the new year right to their website. In fact, I was just looking this morning. I almost pulled the trigger on another pack because they've got a pack with like a sweatshirt and a jacket and a raglan tee and a couple other things. And the whole thing is like $65. It is a great deal. And then you could take that $65 and get another 25% discount on top with the promo code DolphinsTalk. So it's well worth it. If you're a guy looking for some great clothes, trueclassic.com, fire in the promo code DolphinsTalk, save 25% off of your order. And if you spend, I believe, over $100, you're going to get free shipping as well. So it's all good over there at True Classic. So check it out, trueclassic.com, promo code DolphinsTalk. Brain, on the other side of the ball, listen, McCorkle Jones has had his problems, but he's been a little bit better of late. He's a guy that is shiftier than most people realize in the pocket. But I think the key for this Dolphins defense is going to be finding the balance, and as it has been in recent weeks, finding the balance between the all-out blitz and rushing four. And the most important thing is finding a way to get home on this quarterback so that he can't just pick us apart down the field. We know that the Patriots earlier in the season were trying to be a little bit more of a long ball team, and it didn't really work out. So they're playing a bit more conservative style when it comes to passing the ball. But then this is also a team that really likes to run the ball with Ramondre Stevenson, and they may have Damian Harris back for this game. So, Brain, when it comes to slowing down the Patriots offense, which is not great, let's be clear. The Patriots defense has been almost more likely to score a touchdown recently than the Patriots offense. But that doesn't mean you want to be giving this team a lot of short fields because they will take advantage of your mistakes. They are a Bill Belichick coach team after all. So, Brain, when it comes to slowing down McCorkle Jones and the New England Patriots, what does this defense need to do? What's going to be the key for you?
Well, the funny thing is that, ironically, the thing that excuse me.
Gesundheit. Oh, a sneeze. Didn't even mute himself. We love it.
No, yeah. We keep
Full
it raw.
snot.
We keep it raw here on the Same Old Dolphins
That's
Show.
right.
The ironic thing is that the thing that we've been calling for the last few weeks that the Dolphins have been, reluctant to do, Josh Boyer's been reluctant to do, is to dial back on the blitzing because the Dolphins secondary is banged up. And you need, you kind of, hang your hat on the talent of your defensive line, and you should be able to get pressure with four and drop 7 guys into coverage, and you should be good enough to do it that way. But McCorkle Jones is actually one of the worst quarterbacks in the league under pressure. So the Dolphins have had a lot of success in the last 3 games against the Patriots, winning the last 3 games against the Patriots against McCorkle Jones, by pressuring him. Now, you can't just say, this is what we're going to do every single time. There's got to be some nuance to it. You got to be able to pick your spots. But that said, because of the Patriots' lack of weapons on the outside, you should be able to have some success manning up on those receivers at times and bringing the extra rusher and forcing Jones into making some mistakes. But I still think, given the talent of this defensive line, and given there was a stat against the Packers, granted, McCorkle Jones, not Aaron Rodgers, but the Dolphins blitzed Aaron Rodgers 25 times. On 25 dropbacks, they blitzed Aaron Rodgers, and they sacked him once, and he had a passer rating of over 111. On his other throws, he had a passer rating of 23. And it wasn't like the defense lost them that game against the Packers, but when you look at those numbers, it underscores the problem with this Dolphins defense, aside from injuries. The play calling has been a problem. Josh Boyer has not adjusted. They've been overly aggressive, and it has not worked out. I am hoping, this feels to me like the week where Josh Boyer says, okay, I've finally seen enough. We're going to stop blitzing, and the Patriots are going to run all over us. and Mac Jones is going to pick us apart underneath because we're not going to blitz. I hope that that's not the case. I think I hope that as a defensive coordinator and as a head coach, because look, Mike McDaniel can defer to his assistants as much as he wants to, but at the end of the day, he's the head coach. So it all falls onto him at the end of the day. So if he wants to go up to Josh Boyer and say, hey, I think we need to, dial back the blitzes a little bit, then Josh Boyer is going to dial back the blitzes or he's going to get fired. So
might get fired either way.
He might get fired either way, but he might get fired because, Mike McDaniel is giving him too long of a leash. I mean, this defense turned things around last year when Brian Flores took defensive play calling away from Josh Boyer, and defensive play calling has been an issue all year long. So at this point, I have no faith that Josh Boyer is going to get it right. We're just hoping. That's kind of where we're at with this team. It's like we've lost faith that this team is good enough or that they're going to figure out the recipe, but we're just hoping.
Yes. I mean, that's where we are. We're at that point in the season where we're on a 4-game losing streak and everything is falling apart. We're in the midst of what would be, if they cannot correct course, right? If they can't correct course, this is the worst collapse in ever for the Miami Dolphins.
Yes.
We talked about that a little bit on the last episode, but I think so.
If they don't make the playoffs, this is the worst collapse in Dolphin history.
Yeah.
Period. Regardless of the fact that, if Tua doesn't play in these last 2 games, which I think factors into it, because my argument about comparing this to the 93 team with, Marino getting hurt earlier in the season and the Dolphins relying on Scott Mitchell and Steve DeBerg the rest of the way, I think gives them a little bit of a pass in comparison. But yes, Dan Marino got hurt in like the 5th week of that season, the 5th or 6th game in that season. The damage has already been done with Tua at quarterback. The Dolphins need to figure out a way to make the playoffs, or this is the worst collapse in team history. And this team has a lot of collapses, so that's saying something.
Yeah, this is a Dolphins franchise. Somebody was talking to me about 1999 on Twitter today and how the Dolphins collapsed that year. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, that team, I think they were 7-2, and then they finished 9-7, I think. But that team still made the playoffs and won a playoff game. Yes, they were humiliated by the Jaguars' worst playoff loss in the Super Bowl era, but they got into the playoffs and they won a playoff game. So, I mean, it was a collapse, but it's certainly not the worst ever. But yeah, this is a team that has historically done this before. That's why we're so frustrated. That's why you hear even younger Dolphin fans who have not been through the wars like we have for years and years and witnessed collapses like this over and over and over again are starting to get this feeling. Because, I mean, even if you're a young Dolphin fan and your Dolphins consciousness only goes back, let's say as far back as like 2013, You have witnessed this team twice be in this position, maybe not fading, but with opportunities to win big road games to get into the playoffs the last 2 years and then missed. You know, we've seen this before for this team. So the hope is that the Dolphins can turn things around. And if they can, there's a lot of possibility. And there's also another possibility that is floating out there is that the Dolphins could find themselves in week 18 playing on national television in their final game of the season, because the NFL has a Saturday block here's the tweet from Barry Jackson, Jets at Dolphins next weekend could be in any of 5 time slots, 4:30 or 8:15 on Saturday, 1 p.m. or 4:25 p.m. on Sunday, or 8:20 p.m. on Sunday. If there is a situation where I am of the belief that in all likelihood, Jacksonville versus Tennessee is going to be the Sunday night game next week. But if the Dolphins and Jets turns out to be a win and in scenario for either team, there is a good chance, because New York is the biggest media market in the country, that is the game that ends up being the Sunday night game, and Jacksonville, Tennessee gets moved to Saturday night. But that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is the Dolphins need to go. And if I'm a Dolphin fan, I don't want to be on that national televised game. I don't want to be in that spot. I want my game next Sunday to be completely meaningless. I want it to be a bye. I want it to be a game where Skylar Thompson plays the full game at quarterback for the Dolphins. And that's my thought. So let's go out there and beat New England on Sunday and hope that the Seahawks can do us a favor. I'm a big Seahawks fan. I pull for the Seahawks anyway because my wife is a Seahawks fan, but I'm a huge Seahawks fan, particularly if the Dolphins beat the Patriots on Sunday.
Yeah. Well, if you lose that game, then the game will not be a primetime game, at least not Sunday night, if you lose this game, because then, you have a scenario where if the Patriots are to beat Buffalo, then the game is meaningless. Right. So if the Dolphins lose, then the game's either going to be on Saturday or it's going to be a Sunday afternoon game. But if the Dolphins win, then you've got the possibility of that scenario being. So I don't mind if the Dolphins, obviously I would love for the Dolphins to win and for the Jets to lose. And then we don't have to worry about that last game, but I would much rather have the primetime Sunday game than, go into week 18 needing the Patriots to lose, or needing the Patriots to lose to Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, you want to avoid that situation anyway, and that's the weird thing where you're kind of like, if the Dolphins, the good thing is the Dolphins result will be in the can, so you know whether or not that game is going to mean anything for the Dolphins. The Dolphins may have it all wrapped up by then. If the Dolphins are going to need Buffalo to beat New England, so if the Dolphins lose the game on Sunday, then you find yourself in that position where you actually kind of want the Bills to beat Cincinnati. You kind of want the Bills to be still in the race for that number 1 seed. If they were to lose, in all likelihood, the Bills are going to have something to play for anyway in week 18, but you want them to really be in a competition for that 1 spot, and needing to beat the Patriots in order to secure the number 1 overall seed. And so, you're almost in a position where if you end up losing to the Patriots, where you're cheering for the Bills to beat Cincinnati, which is kind of gross because I don't want the Bills to be the number 1 overall seed. I would like them, if they're going to go to the Super Bowl, to have to win the AFC Championship game on the road somewhere.
I'll do one better than that. Of all the teams that the Dolphins could, if the Dolphins were to make the playoffs as the number 7 seed, the team that I'd want them to play is Buffalo.
Yeah.
I'd want another shot at Buffalo than having to go to Kansas City or Cincinnati. I don't feel terribly confident about any of it, but because of the rivalry, because of the familiarity, and because of the tightness of the 2 games where the Dolphins have played Buffalo, I would rather the Dolphins go play Buffalo than play Kansas City or Cincinnati. So I would love for Buffalo to end up being the number 2 seed.
Well, so, it would be great to be able to say that Buffalo is number 2. It's that's always one of my favorite things to say. So anyway, it's
one of Brian Cox's favorite things to say. He famously
Absolutely.
said it. The Bills are number 2.
That's right. Love Brian Cox. What a legend. All right, then. Well, I guess it's time to make some predictions. So if you're watching live on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel or the I'm a Miami Dolphin Fan Facebook page, go ahead and put your prediction in the comments. Let us know what you think the final score of this game is going to be on Sunday. And if you haven't done so already, go ahead and smash the like button on this video. We appreciate that. Brain, I'll let you go first. Prediction time.
So remember early in the season when Mike McDaniel said that this is a defensive-led football team until proven otherwise? And then somewhere around the middle of the season, we realized that this defense couldn't be counted on, and this was an offensive-led football team. Well,
yeah,
without Tua, it's time for this to be a defensive-led football team. I understand that they've got a lot of injuries, but you also went out and you traded a first-round pick for Bradley Chubb, and you gave him a bunch of money. You've got to hang your hat on your defense at some point, and going up against a Patriots offense that is about as inept as any offense that the Dolphins have faced, maybe since Pittsburgh. This Dolphins defense needs to step up and needs to make this a game where the Dolphins can win even if they don't score 20 points. And I'm concerned about the defense. I have my doubts. I actually think the defense can do that. I think the Dolphins defense can keep the Patriots under 20 points. But now I'm concerned about the offense without Tua. And I'm concerned that with this Patriots defense, that is legitimately one of the best defenses and probably the best defense that this Dolphins team has faced since facing San Francisco a few weeks ago. I'm concerned that this Dolphins offense is also going to struggle to score 20 points. So I'm definitely, if I was gambling on this, if I was betting on this, I'm definitely pounding the under. And I just don't trust this Dolphins team right now. I think that this is a close, low-scoring game, the way many Dolphins-Patriots games back like 20 years ago were. And much like 20 years ago when the Patriots were winning all of those close, low-scoring games, that's what I think is going to happen this week. I think the Patriots win this one 17-13.
Okay. So you think Jason Sanders is going to make 2 field goals?
But I also think he'll
miss one extra point.
I think he'll go 2 of 3
from field goals.
Yeah, I think he'll go 2 of 3 from field goals, which isn't good enough. And it's going to be the difference between the Dolphins needing a field goal to win the game or a touchdown to win the game at the end. And then Teddy Bridgewater will throw an interception to seal the deal.
All right. Well, let's take a look at some of the responses that we've gotten in the chat so far. We've got a handful of them. So let's read them here. Jace says Miami 16, New England 7. Dario Sanchez says 21-20 to the Fins. John Guel says 17-13 Miami. Daryl Woodard says Pats 2011. Brian John Cox 20-16 Miami. And C Sharper 21-17 Miami.
So still feeling pretty positive as a fan.
Yeah,
base.
a lot of Dolphin fans feeling pretty good about this one. We just got another one from Tracy Hutchings who says 23-16 Dolphins. So that's a higher scoring affair. Here's my thoughts. Going into the Jets and Vikings games earlier this season, we talked about how those were big games for Mike McDaniel because he showed how he could develop a game plan for this offense with Tua to beat some real good teams, right? At that point, they had beaten Buffalo and beaten Baltimore, right? And had already beaten New England, although the offense wasn't like all shiny and beautiful in that game. But they won those games. And we talked about, well, this is going to be a real test for Mike McDaniel to build a game plan to win these games with a different quarterback. And then what we saw in both of those games was that the offensive game plan was thrown out of the window completely. Like, right. I mean, in the Jets game, it was thrown out of the window on the first play. We never really got to see it because the Dolphins were pinned back in their own end zone and safetied on the first play, and then the ghost concussion and all that. And then in the game against Minnesota, we saw that a game plan was put together and seemed to be executed okay. The Dolphins offense looked okay for the first part of that game before Skylar Thompson got hurt, and then Teddy Bridgewater came in and things kind of went off the rails a little bit. So this is a big game for Mike McDaniel, and for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, the pressure has to be building on him that his team has lost 4 games in a row at the most crucial point of the season. He's got to know, I don't care who you are, he's got to know who he's working for. And he's got to know that even though it maybe shouldn't be, if he loses 5 or 6 games in a row to close this season, his seat is going to be warm at the very least. And so this is a big game for him because he's got to stop the bleeding for himself. He's got to stop the bleeding for the franchise. And on top of that, he's got to prove now that even without his number 1 quarterback, that the quarterback that he and Chris Greer went out of their way to sign to a $6.5 million contract, that there is a game plan that can work and that can win with that player. And he's got to be able to show that he can build a plan that can win, even against a tough division foe like New England. It's also a huge game for Teddy Bridgewater because Teddy Bridgewater is on a 1-year deal, and that deal is up at the end of the season. And the quarterback market is going to be alive this offseason. There's going to be movement. There are going to be quarterbacks moving all over the place. Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, possibly Aaron Rodgers, possibly Tom Brady, possibly Geno Smith, and Teddy Bridgewater is going to factor into that mix somehow, maybe not as a starter, but certainly as a backup somewhere. And so it's a big game for him as well, because he's still got to prove that he's got that ability. So there's a lot riding on this game for him. And then, of course, a lot of people are talking about the narrative of, well, here's the Miami kid, and he has the opportunity to lead his hometown team to the playoffs. And that's a big deal too, right? All of that factors into this. So it's a big game for both of those two guys in particular. As it's obviously a big game for the rest of the team as well. McDaniel's been talking about how his team has kept their heads up, and they've got the attitude is good, and the team is looking good. The team is feeling good, and they're ready to go into this fight, and they feel like they are ready to go in and get this win. And they really need to put it together because, like I said earlier, just on paper, this is a better team. The Miami Dolphins are a better team. Even without Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins have the better team. The Dolphins still have the better quarterback on the field with Teddy Bridgewater over Mac Jones. So there is no excuse not to go in there and find a way to win this game. You absolutely have to do it. That said, we're talking about the Miami Dolphins. And we're talking about the Miami Dolphins, who are on a 4-game skid. We've seen the bottom fall out before. And this is a big divisional game at the end of the year. It's not a elimination game for the Miami Dolphins. It is an elimination game for the New England Patriots. If the New England Patriots fail to win this game, their season is like they're just about, if they lose the game, they're eliminated from playoff contention. I guess if they're still technically alive with a tie. But if they lose this game, the Patriots season is over. They play out the string in week 18 and it's all done. So those players are already coming in with a higher level of desperation. The task for the Dolphins is to meet that level of desperation and to execute in such a way that you can win this game and hopefully give yourself an opportunity at not a bye week in week 18, but an opportunity to sort of take a breath and take a breather and rest and heal up, right? There are a lot of players on this Dolphins team who could use that week off. Bradley Chubb, Alec Ingold, Teron Armstead, Tua Tagovailoa. The Dolphins can win this game and get that assist from the Seahawks. Tua's 100% getting the next game off, 100%. So that's the task at hand. The question is whether or not they're going to do it. And my prediction is that this is going to be a closely fought game. You have to find a way to get the win. You're going to have to probably win ugly. You're going to have to dig down deep because it's a divisional game after all. But like I said, there's no excuse not to win it. So I'm going to make a prediction. And that is that your Miami Dolphins, in an ugly game, in overtime, defeat the New England Patriots 19-13.
Oh, so they're doing it with a touchdown.
Is that the kiss of death? Maybe. But they're going to do it. Yeah, opening drive touchdown in overtime. It's going to be a 75-yard touchdown run by Jeff Wilson. How's that for specificity?
Not known for his breakaway speed, but I'll take it.
Yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So there it is. I'm predicting the Dolphins get the 19-13 win. Aaron predicts the Patriots are going to win 17-13. I mean, at this point, we're just going to watch this game and hope for the best at this point, because that's what we can do, right? That's what we have to do at this point. Brain, any parting words for the people?
Look, it's gut check time.
Yes, this is. If it wasn't already, it is now.
This is gut check time. We're going to find out what this team is made of. You brought in Teddy Bridgewater to be a backup quarterback that can stem the tide if Tua missed some time. If you need him to win one game as a starting quarterback, this is the one.
One game.
One game. That's all we need out of Teddy Bridgewater, is to win one game. And then we'll see what happens. Maybe we need a second game next week. But hopefully we just need him for one game. And then if you do, and you do punch your ticket to the playoffs, you do have the potential of resetting and going potentially into the playoffs as a relatively healthy team if Tua is ultimately cleared. And that, again, is going to stay over this franchise as a cloud until we have an answer on it. But if you want any hope of this season turning around, it's got to come this week. I don't see, even if all of the scenarios play into the Dolphins' hands, if you cannot go into New England and win a game that is essentially a must-win game, then I have a very hard time believing that you're going to go into Cincinnati, Kansas City, or Buffalo and win a football game.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
So it's gut check time. It's time to prove that, at the very least, that you are a legitimate playoff team.
Mm-hmm.
Prove it this Sunday. I don't care if it's Tua or Skyler or Teddy. Win the damn game.
Win the damn game, he says. It's interesting. I was listening to the Athletic football podcast with Robert Mays, and he did an episode this week called the Wild Card Threat Index. And both he and his guests, who is every Dolphin fan's favorite, Ben Solak from The Ringer, and they both had the Miami Dolphins as one of the highest risk teams to the contenders, like the contenders being Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, Cowboys, Eagles, 49ers. Like, he had, among the wild card possibilities, the teams that could end up being wild card teams and end up wreaking havoc, they both had like the Chargers and the Dolphins as the top teams that could wreak havoc, because the Dolphins have that that offense that can be explosive. And so I'm not saying that I necessarily have that same belief that I believe that the Dolphins could make it into the postseason and make that deep run, but they have an ingredient that, when cooked at the correct temperature, can cause problems for teams. So if they can make it into the dance, which I mean, and I think we're all in agreement that the bare minimum of acceptable results, like when you ask people at the beginning of the season what their acceptable result for this season would be, most of them would have told you the acceptable result is go to the playoffs and win a game. That was what most people would have told you was an acceptable result at the beginning of the season. At the beginning of the season, the bottom of that range of acceptable results was make the playoffs, right? Nobody would have been okay with this Dolphins roster missing the playoffs, which, by the way, I predicted them to do in the beginning of the season.
We both did.
Yeah, right. So let's just say it's all there for them. And if they can somehow get there, then you're in the tournament and anything is possible, you know? And frankly, based on the way this season has gone, the Dolphins are essentially playing with house money at that point. I mean, obviously we want them to go further. We want them blah, 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 blah. But if you can find a way to stem this 4-game losing streak and get this win in this game and make your way into the playoffs so that you can have a nice and easy week 18, that is a game changer, not just for your football team, but for this fan base, for everybody who's worried and freaking out and all of that. You know, I'm actually fairly convinced that if the Dolphins win and clinch a playoff spot, that somebody will come at us telling us to change our name. But well, I'll wait and see what happens there. But let's go out there, Miami. Come on. I've said it before. I'll say it again. There's no wrong way to love your football team. And I love the Miami Dolphins. I've loved them my entire life. I'm never going to stop loving them. So I want them to go out there on Sunday and find a way. Please go out there and beat the awful, disgusting, horrible New England Patriots in their backyard. What do we got? Like a 4-game winning streak going right now against the Patriots. Let's go make it a 5th in a row. Let's go out there. Let's go beat the Patriots, beat Bill Belichick, beat McCorkle Jones, beat all of these bums, beat these massholes in Foxboro, beat all of them, make them go home sad, make them get in their cars and drive back home to Boston and New Hampshire and Vermont and all these places in the Northeast that nobody likes. Make them go back there and make them be sad because you ended their playoff dreams, Miami Dolphins. Go out there and end the playoff dreams of the New England Patriots and book your spot in the postseason and make Dolphin fans breathe easy for at least 1 week. Please. I'm begging you.
Oh, well, I hope they heard you. You know, they were probably watching Mike McDaniel's press conference instead, but hopefully somehow the message gets through and they, you know, Christian Wilkins at least can, you know, look back on his conversation with you and he could say, you know, I want to win for that guy.
Yeah. Win it for me, Christian Wilkins. Go wreck Mac Jones. Go wreck him. Wreck him on Sunday. Follow us on Twitter at Amplify to Rock, at Aaron the Brain, at Same Old Dolphins. Download, rate, review, subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere that you get your podcast. Subscribe to the I'm a Miami Dolphin fan Facebook page. Subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. We appreciate it. Turn on notifications. And yeah, we will be with you early next week to talk about what happens in this game on Sunday. Hopefully it's good news. Hopefully we're in a good mood. And hopefully we are kicking off 2023 with a big Miami Dolphins dub. Thank you to everybody for listening over the course of 2022. We appreciate it very much. Hopefully you can take an opportunity to reflect on some wonderful things that happened to you in your life over the course of this year and, you know, celebrate those things because those are the things that are truly important in life. Celebrate the positives and try not to dwell too much on the negatives. I know the negatives can be a little overwhelming sometimes, but, you know, do what you can. Anyway, thanks as always for listening. As we end 2022 and end this episode, it is as important as always to say, take care of yourselves and each other. Go Dolphins!
Just please win 1 game. Just 1.